on education, health, science, and technology. We're really pleased to have this opportunity to provide a briefing on the work of the subcommittee and the policy proposals that will be before the 54th ANC National Conference for further deliberation, consideration, and decision-making. Our statement this afternoon outlines to the broad South African public, our people, and to the media, the journey that we've traveled thus far to implement the resolutions of the 53rd ANC National Conference, which was held in 2012, as well as outlining some key policy proposals that must be decided upon by our national conference. These were adopted, as you may recall, at the National Policy Conference we held in June this year. We've all been talking in the last week that this is the 4th year since we lost our dear president, the founding president of our democracy, President Nelson Mandela. We remain inspired by his life's work. We will celebrate his life and remember his legacy in the centenary year of his birth, as announced by government in the year 2018. President Mandela made a profound contribution to the ANC's education policy and practice. In his address to the Presidential and Premier Education Awards of 22nd November 1997, President Mandela said the following: "The power of education extends beyond the development of skills that are needed for economic success. It can contribute to nation building and reconciliation. Our previous system emphasized the physical and other differences of South Africans with devastating effects. We are steadily but surely introducing education that enables our children to exploit their similarities and common goals while appreciating the strength in their diversity." Those were truly profound words at that time. That was a commitment from President Mandela and his government to the promotion of excellence, nation building, and reconciliation through education. These were and remain non-negotiable. It was also a commitment to policies that make schools, colleges, and universities accessible to all South Africans, and more so, inclusive places, particularly for Black people who were previously excluded, and for women in our society. Since the dawn of our democracy in 1994, efforts have been made to place science and technology at the center of development in our country. Our schools, our colleges, and our universities have become accessible to all South Africans as a result of 2 decades of implementation of progressive policies and programs as advocated by President Mandela, as stated earlier. We have observed the growth and successes of our country's basic education sector, particularly the increase in the number of enrolled young people and the increase in those that complete their national senior certificate examinations successfully. We are very appreciative of the introduction of the 3-stream model of education, whose impact, we believe, will be seen in its contribution to skills development and economic growth in South Africa. We've also noted in our work the positive impact of implementation of ANC policies, which have resulted in an increased and expanded participation in higher education. At the same time, there has been a huge expansion in the number of women studying in higher education. In fact, women are now a majority in our university system. We have experienced transformation of our universities from insular institutions to increasingly open institutions for all. The growth in financial support to students through the National Students Financial Aid Scheme is one of the greatest advances that have taken place in the last 2 decades of democracy under the leadership of the African National Congress. On performance against 2012 resolutions, it will be recalled that the 53rd National Conference mandated the then incoming NEC to continue implementing programs to ensure that education remains the apex priority of the African National Congress and of the country, that health services continue to be delivered in the context of this also being a priority, and that science, technology, and innovation should be integrated into the work of the entire South African society. So how have we done? Well, as a subcommittee, we've been very fortunate to enjoy full participation of representatives of all constituent and fraternal organizations of the Alliance. We've had participation of the Women and Youth Leagues, chairpersons and whips of study groups in Parliament, portfolio committee chairpersons from basic education, higher education, health, science and technology. MECs responsible for these sectors have fully participated, and all allied organizations, including the various youth student formations. On science and technology, the ANC, through its science, technology, and innovation sector, has provided strategic leadership and coordination of the national system of innovation. The principle of mainstreaming science, technology, and innovation in the ANC, in government, and increasingly in the private sector has been adopted and promoted by our government. Despite efforts of the science, technology, and innovation sector to get adequate finance and increase the capacity of the national system of innovation, we have not as a country reached the target of 1.5% expenditure of gross domestic product on research, development, and innovation. This is primarily due to the unavailability or the increasing decline in public resources available for public expenditure. We've had a decline as well in business research and development investment since the global economic crisis of 2008. But we were very pleased through the recent report, the National Survey on Research and Development, to see that this decline is being reversed positively. Science, technology, and innovation programs led by science councils and our centers of competence are regarded as important for economic growth. The important ones that we currently have underway as mega initiatives in research and innovation are the Square Kilometre Array and projects we've invested in, such as the Hydrogen South Africa Fuel Cells Initiative, the titanium beneficiation novel production processes, the manganese precursor development, as well as the fluorochemicals expansion initiative. All of these, once brought to commercial scale, will make an immense contribution to economic growth in South Africa. Our STI sector is also involved in and focused on initiatives needed for science and mathematics, teacher training, and improved learner support initiatives. On basic education, we have continued in the sector to improve access and inclusivity. As a result, our country has more young people entering education and acquiring a school-leaving qualification, and so entering colleges and entering university. The sector's highly successful programs include its early childhood development programs and especially access to grade R. They also include the introduction of ICTs in schools through use of the Operation Pakisa model, the recent introduction of the three-stream curriculum model of academic, technical, vocational, and vocational occupational streams, the introduction of ICT-resourced teacher development centers throughout the country, and the rollout of a targeted learner improvement and attainment strategy. In ensuring that there are improvements in the resourcing of education and in the procurement of resources for education, the sector has adopted a centralized approach in the procurement of stationery, textbooks, and workbooks for all schools. The sector is providing effective and impactful health and social programs, including psychosocial services, services supporting HPV vaccination against cervical cancer for young girls in school, and monitoring of young people's sight, hearing, and other health factors. The Karikude Mass Literacy Campaign, one of our government's programs of excellence, has changed lives and created working opportunities for many young people. It has received recognition awards nationally as well as internationally. We're currently in the basic education sector finalizing a national policy for grade R, which has the intention to make grade R compulsory through the processing by Parliament of the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill. The International Association for the Evaluation of Educational Achievement Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study, popularly known as TIMSS, provided in its most recent results indications that South Africa has achieved the largest improvement in learning outcomes between 2002 and 2015 in mathematics and science, although from a low base. This was marked as the best improvement among all countries that participated in TIMSS in 2015. In the basic education sector, we remain confronted and concerned about the following key challenges: continuous disruptions of schooling during times of protest, high dropout and repetition rates, especially in grades 9 to 12, health-related challenges and their impact on schooling, particularly in the disease burdens of tuberculosis and HIV and AIDS, and ongoing procurement challenges related to acquisition and provision of learner-teacher support materials. We're also concerned about the slow pace of infrastructure delivery and inadequate provision of school furniture. And of course, we want to see higher levels of achievement by learners in numeracy and in literacy. In the higher education and training sector, we have, through the sector, introduced a newly structured National Student Financial Aid Scheme, which has as its intention the implementation of fee-free education for the poor, as directed by the 2012 conference. You will recall that what the 2012 conference determined was that for young people who are recipients of the NSFAS grants and loan, on successful completion of their studies, the loan component would be converted to a grant. And this has indeed been happening. We have consolidated infrastructure requirements with a plan that sets out the full cost estimates and needs with respect to the post-school education and training system. The implementation of this map of infrastructure needs in higher education has been linked to and will be coordinated by the Presidential Infrastructure Coordination Council. The sector has also contributed immensely to the country's skills development, a factor which has had a huge impact on social development and economic growth. In the area of health, we've ensured that government continues with the work of combating HIV infections and responding to the pandemic of HIV and AIDS. We have performed extremely well in programs of government against HIV and AIDS. Our anti-HIV and AIDS program has resulted in fewer deaths and increased life expectancy. We have reduced overall mortality in the country. We've had a reduction of maternal mortality. We've had a drop significantly in mother-to-child transmission, as well as a reduction in child and infant mortality, and a drop in tuberculosis mortality due to successful access to antiretroviral treatment. The sector has also instituted a number of game-changing interventions linked to innovation, such as gene expert testing, and we have clear evidence of our tuberculosis disease burden beginning a decline. We remain, however, concerned that TB is still the primary underlying cause of death in South Africa. Through our health sector, we've reactivated programs to ensure that the district health system is functional in all provinces as part of our steps of strengthening and broadening primary health care provision. The white paper on the national health insurance was adopted by government this year, and work is being done to formulate the NHI bill and finalize this process, and thus submit the bill to Parliament for processing. The NHI pilot sites are actively preparing the national health system for implementation of NHI. Work on the establishment of the NHI fund has been progressing positively, and we look forward to its establishment early next year. On policy proposals, we are hopeful that delegates to the 54th National Conference will apply their collective minds to policy proposals that emerged out of the 5th ANC National Policy Conference. Some of those recommendations for our sectors and the policy proposals are the following. On science and technology, that we should agree that we need to incentivize government and the business sector to use and increase the uptake of locally produced technologies, because there's no use asking our researchers to be innovative and then we do not use the products that they produce. We are also proposing an increase in support for postgraduate funding for poor students to increase South Africa's research capacity. We're proposing as well that we should encourage learners in schools, students at colleges, and workers in every sector to invent new technologies and products. So we are proposing a strong movement in South Africa of social innovation or grassroots innovation. And we propose the review of postgraduate funding to improve race and gender representativity in the sector and to encourage the retention of qualified researchers as full-time researchers in the system. On basic education, we're proposing that we should accelerate programs and intensify to improve literacy and numeracy, particularly in formerly disadvantaged schools. We believe we must have steps taken to provide security to protect all public property, all schools, all health clinics, all community facilities. We're proposing the establishment of public schools for talented or specially gifted learners, and that we should encourage young people and incentivize them to enter technical and vocational education, but ensure that we have a very well-articulated mobility in these fields from school to college to university. Otherwise, they become regarded as a cul-de-sac rather than opening up new areas of opportunity. On higher education and training, the proposals we wish to have deliberated upon are that we should clarify the nature and role of the entire college sector that comprises community education and training colleges, technical and vocational education and training colleges, and other colleges for specialized purposes, such as agriculture, nursing, emergency care, policing, and teaching. We're proposing that we should promote the quality of learning and teaching and the nature of the curriculum in the college and university sector, in line with the call for institutional and curriculum decolonization. We're proposing that we should accelerate and complete the opening of specialized colleges to increase training in agriculture, nursing, and teaching. I may say we've been making this proposal since 2007 in Polokwane, and we need action on it. We also are saying the conference must direct the government to immediately finalize the model for free higher education for those who are unable to afford the costs of higher education. We should develop incentives to increase the number of young people entering scarce skills programs. We should finalize the framework for regulating higher education fees and redesign the funding formula for the college and university sector. We also propose that conference agrees that we should implement the Central Application Service from March 2018 at university level and implement the system across the post-school education and training sector by 2022. We're also proposing that we are losing a lot of talent by having a very early retirement age in the sector. And we want the retirement age of academic staff to be increased. In health, we must strengthen the measures to improve the quality of care offered by health practitioners in both the public and the private sector. We need to find ways of curbing medical malpractice, of curbing high costs of medical insurance, and of curbing litigation against medical malpractice, which is not an honest form always of litigation. We believe we must initiate a national preventative vaccine program, making vaccines available for all vaccine-preventable diseases. We propose the revitalization of the military health infrastructure, which is in a very dismal state, including acquisition for this sector of the necessary health technology. In conclusion then, the main challenges of ensuring good education outcomes, of delivering good quality health services, of ensuring that South Africans develop a culture where science, technology, and innovation is their second nature. These challenges continue to persist in our country. Our national conference will discuss ways of strengthening the capacity and capability of the state as an important element toward providing excellent delivery of services to our people. We will also focus at conference on strengthening the ability of the ANC to plan, implement, enforce, monitor, and achieve the desired objectives in the service of our nation. We are confident that all the sectors we had responsibility for have made good progress in implementing the resolutions of the 53rd ANC National Conference. We've noted areas of excellence in performance, but also areas of concern where there's much room for improvement and where urgent action is desperately necessary. But in the total sum of our assessment of where we are, we believe all our sectors are on target to achieve the goals that had been set for them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Comrade Naledi. Thank you, Chairperson. You let me know when you're ready to take questions.
I'm always ready.
Thank you. Can we take a round of the first 5 questions? Okay. Go ahead.
Gay Davis, RBC News. Minister, I wonder if you could just elaborate on NHI, because essentially what you're saying is that the legislative framework is going to be coming to Parliament next year early. Are we going to expect any allocations in February from the Minister of Finance? Just how far are we there with that? And then just in terms of the creation of, I think you referred to the specialist, to public schools for talented pupils. Isn't there a concern then that we're taking pupils' vulnerability out of classrooms, they're going into a special, a new special school somewhere? What happens to the kids who left? I don't know if that, isn't that sort of ghettoizing further, the schools? Those 2 questions will be now.
Thanks, Gay. Pizzo?
You mentioned that some of the challenges in basic education include high dropout, reduced grades, 9 and 12. What are you proposing in the conference in addressing this kind of problem?
Ms. Wandile?
Almost at the direction by delegates that you discussed the issue of free education for the poor. So have you taken into account the report that was just recently released in which it looked at physically on that way of free education?
The Hair Commission.
Yeah.
Samkelo? Cool. Those are the only last 3 questions, Comrade Naledi.
Thank you very much. Okay, on the NHI.
We prefer here.
Oh, I have to go up there, do I? Do this sort of musical chairs thing. All right. On the NHI, yes, the expectation is 2018. We should have that bill coming into Parliament. We have the NHI white paper adopted, so that sets out the policy framework. Now what you need to do is convert that into statute. So that's what will happen. With respect to budget, yes, we would expect that we begin to get very concrete signals on the NHI fund, because it's desperately urgent that we have it created. Otherwise, it delays, the next steps of the phases we anticipate in the NHI white paper. So it is important that the budget next year begins to give us certainty in that regard. And I think the discussions have been proceeding very positively. So one is positively hopeful in that regard. On schools for talented learners, I don't think the intention would be to ghettoize. This exists all over the world, and we haven't really done it much in South Africa. If you identify your likely virtuoso classical pianist, there must be a facility where, they're able to then be honed in order for that talent to bloom. And it would be a range of fields in which this is likely. There are young children in school today who it is clear can do very difficult logarithms at age 7, but we're keeping them in the same setting. We need to be able to nurture them. So I think what one would hope for is, alongside a development such as the one we're proposing, that simultaneously we're improving quality so that all children then are benefiting from the education we provide. But you don't want to lose that exceptionalism that exists within the population. And we know that it exists, but we tend to pretend it doesn't. We're saying let's give it credence and let's really look at what could be done. On the dropout question, I'm going to ask Comrade Anvo's more attuned to the responses. There are responses of retention. He will speak to them. On free education for the poor, no, we're not saying conference must discuss it. We say government 2018, we're expecting implementation. That's what our committee has said. No, it's no more discussion. Says Vumelan. Siya implementa sifuni 2018 sikale noma siqala kanjani, but 2018 must be the beginning. That is what our committee is saying. On the Her Commission, we would assume that that beginning incorporates elements from there. But 2018 for us is the deadline.
Thank you very much for that. Perhaps to say that we can be heartened by the fact that we have near universal access and attendance in primary school and then above 90% in high school. We've identified as a department a weakness in the senior phase, in other words, pre the FET ban in high school, and we paid particular attention to that reality. And the reality is that if that's an area of neglect, it makes it that much harder for the learners when they go into the FET ban, that is grades 10, 11, and 12. So dedicated focus has been paid to that particular level. Then there are contributing factors to the dropout. One is that previously we only had an academic stream. We can celebrate the fact that we now have a vocational stream for the past 3 years, and we're piloting massively a huge occupational stream, which means that the learner would have a choice between going into the academic stream, following the vocational stream where you have civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, etc., and a range of occupations in the occupational stream. That has contributed. There's also another correlation that we tend to forget. If you look at the intake of learners in the FET and in the TVET colleges, the Technical Vocational Educational Training Centers, it's huge, massive. A large number of learners who are eligible to go to TVETs after they've passed grade 9 are indeed there. So there is now really an investigation or some synergy between higher education and training to find out what is happening to those learners who have left grade 9. So that's another reality that we have to recognize. It is a matter of concern, and I think what Mr. Pando had said, it's important that we ensure that there is this portability in terms of qualifications so that your technical schools are not regarded as lesser than your high school. But so far the program is producing wonderful results, and learners now at least have a choice in remaining in school but going to a technical school for either vocational or occupational training. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just another factor, so sorry about it. It's about teenage pregnancy. It's a reality that we have to confront. And what the Department of Basic Education has done, it's created a document which is highly acclaimed, by the way, globally in terms of sexuality education, to ensure that we are able, in terms of our curriculum content and teacher training, to encourage prevention, delayed sexual activity, and how to cope with challenges that we face in terms of that particular area. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now taking the last hand. Sankelo? Yes.
The role of free education, if I'm not mistaken, in 2007 for the poor. Fast track 10 years later is the general implementation. What does it say about the ANC implementing its own policies? You've seen your own ministers in the communication space failing to implement ANC policies. They have not implemented any time. are you simply failing to implement your own policies? So at an outbreak of fees must fall from students who demand free higher education, the ANC was found wanting and could not adhere to its own policies it had taken. It had to be hijacked by other political formations. Where do you stand with the implementation of your own policies, or are you simply failing to do so?
That was the last question from you. Okay?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to ask about the report that was released, the Brill's report, and 78% of grade 4 learners not grasping what it is that they read. It's truly devastating if you think about what that means in terms of the numbers and coming through, and perhaps it suggests one of the reasons for the very high dropout rate that you get with the FT back. So I'm just wondering, I mean, I think that's a national emergency. What is the committee's views on this, and how can we have come to this point without realizing that things are as bad as they actually are?
Ms. Andele? You okay? Okay. Those were the last two questions.
You have a question? Well, to the gentleman who says the ANC has failed in its policies, I think one of the things you clearly don't do is read reports on higher education. We have one of the largest student financial aid systems in any country in Africa. So we have had great success in providing access for the poorest in our country. What we've not been able to finalize is a scheme for entirely fee-free education, higher education. And that certainly is something that we believe must be attended to. But I'm fully appreciative that from 2007, we substantially increased the National Student Financial Aid Scheme funding, covered many more young people who would never have enjoyed access to higher education and college had it not been for the policy decision of the African National Congress to do so. Not just was it access to university that was supported by the ANC, it was also access to technical and vocational colleges, which had never been provided by any government before its introduction by the ANC government in 2008. So I would say that from the numbers that we see of young people in post-school higher education and post-school education and training, the government of the African National Congress has made an immense contribution to providing for free access for young people who have had no such opportunity before. The student leadership of organizations allied to the African National Congress participated in the Fees Must Fall campaign. It wasn't just one organization. If you look at all organizations that have played a role in that set of protests, you would find you had the Young Communist League, you had the Youth League of the ANC, you had SASCO, and various other allied organizations. So the notion that Fees Must Fall was a protest of one organization is one that will certainly be challenged by history, and which I challenge as well. On the matter of pearls, what we have agreed, Gail, is that it's important that we as a subcommittee actually say to the ANC, go into the report in detail. Because what we've got at the moment is the very headline that you have referred to. But what is always interesting for us is that a report is issued today, there's a headline tomorrow, and you're dealing with a report of over 300 pages. Who read it in such quick time? So you will find, as you go through the report, that certainly, in terms of comprehension, there are concerns. But in terms of other skills that are assessed by pearls, you actually see an improvement. And what was very interesting was the commentary it was making about those additional improvements in other literacy skills domains. So we've said to the Basic Education Department, we want them to come to us with a full report on each of the commentaries that the Pearls report makes, while we also say to them, we're very worried that children at grade 4 level are not reading at the expected levels of comprehension. So we're studying the report very, very carefully, and the committee, as it undertakes its work, the new committee, will be able to go thoroughly into the detail of what Pearls has reported.
Do you want to add something, Comrade Andrew?
Thank you. Just to add to it, we've recognized the challenges that we face in terms of literacy and numeracy, and for that reason, we paid particular attention to literacy and numeracy in foundation phase. We provide more than 56 million books to our learners to enhance their ability to read and write from grades 1 to grade 9. That's basically bearing fruit. This report is one of many reports. The Minister had earlier spoken about the TIMS report, where South Africa had made dramatic improvement. There is a SACMAC report that was released just this year. And in terms of the SACMAC report, amongst 15 countries in Africa, Southern and East African countries, South Africa is now number 3, above Zimbabwe. That report basically looks at the entire spectrum with socioeconomic context and has indicated that for the first time, our learners across all 9 provinces in literacy and numeracy in grades 3s and 6s have exceeded the mean. So that is encouraging news. Now let's look at the Pearls itself, and we've never disputed or denied the fact that it's an area that we've got to improve on. For that reason, we've ensured that we increase the number of libraries that are made available. We've made, in the past 3 years, more than 4,000 libraries available, because the report says that South Africa is the second last in terms of the provision of reading resources. It also will disclose, and in fact that is the reality, that compared to Russia, for example, that is at top, they have a highly frequent reading population of 85% compared to the 15% of South Africa, which means that parents have not taken the responsibility of ensuring that they are able to stimulate that particular activity. But what is interesting about the Pearls report is the following. Firstly, that the sample comes from 62% of schools that are rural. That's number one. And from that 62%, the report itself says that the difference between an urban setting and a rural setting is at least a grade or 2 because of exposure to English and Afrikaans, mainly the languages of learning and teaching. The other reality is this, and the report will indeed be released in February in terms of the institution. They say that in grade 5, now look at it, you've got 78% on the one hand. In grade 5, it's about 32% that have not achieved the mean. Gauteng, Western Cape, and Free State have been above the mean. So in terms, just in one single year, from grade 4 to grade 5, you have this incredible improvement in terms of reading and reading with comprehension that's there. So that's a reality. But what is more interesting about that is 24% of the readers in grade 5 have English as the second or third language, which means that there is an impact, and we are not suggesting at all that we've achieved optimum standards, but we are saying that we're moving steadily and away from mediocrity, and we have to keep on working at it to motivate the nation, to motivate our people. And therefore, what the Minister has said is there has to be a deep study in terms of this particular report. But I think it's a holistic understanding of it, because there are many, many positives that come through the report itself. So when you look at 78% in grade 4, then you look at 32% in grade 2, in grade 5, just in a year. What accounts for the disparity? Why is the improvement so significant? Why is the improvement in isiZulu, for example, more than 90 points, that is the equivalent of 3 grades, just in a period of 5 years? Why is there a decline in Afrikaans, and why is there an improvement in English? You know, these are factors that we have to look at. But all in all, we say this is one of many reports that we rely on for purposes of analysis. And in terms of the overall assessment that we've made, there is a steady and improved performance in terms of literacy and numeracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Naledi. That brings an end to our presser. We'll see you tomorrow at Nazareth.
All right, the daily ANC briefings from Luthuli House ahead of their elective conference. We've been hearing from Naneri Pandor giving a report on the Education, Health, Science and Technology Subcommittee of the NEC, where she says that the conference will discuss how to strengthen capacity of the state to provide excellent services and the ability of the ANC to plan, implement, monitor and enforce the achievement of their goals. So some of her points very quickly on growth and access to education. She says that women are now in the majority in higher education enrollments, and she says that access and inclusivity continues to grow in basic education. They have successes in early childhood development and grade R. She says some of their challenges are things such as the disruption of schooling during protests, a high dropout rate of grade 9 to 12, HIV and AIDS and TB are problems that they're facing, as well as problems with learner teacher support materials. So that she says that they're proposing also some research funding for black graduates, which she says is a strong move towards social and grassroots innovation. So some of the points coming out of that briefing. Alicia is standing by to bring you your headlines, your day's top stories coming up at the top of the hour. From me until tomorrow, it's bye-bye.